Alright, hello and good morning if you are watching this live and you are somewhere where it is also morning. Or if it is morning and you're watching this in the future, good morning. Good any other time. If you're anywhere else or any other time. Welcome to Conlang with me. This is Conlang with me number 9. And this is a different time than we're used to. But we are going to continue talking about the source languages today, and particularly the sound system that I may or may not end up with in this language. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a review of what we did last time in session 8, and then I'll talk about what we're probably going to get into today. So, last time we talked about what languages my conlang might be coming from. That's pretty much all we accomplished last time because there was a very long discussion. We looked at different tables. Oh, someone in the chat is saying hello. Oh, thank you. And I hope you sleep well. Thanks for popping in and saying hello. Alright, so we talked about what languages this conlang will come from, and we landed on potentially 5, and those 5 languages were Koine Greek, Sanskrit, Hebrew, Turkish, and Tagalog. And I talked about my reasoning for why we ended up with these languages at length last time. And we may decide to get rid of one or multiple of these or sub one out for something else that was on our potential list. But for now, I think this is good. Koine Greek, Sanskrit, Hebrew, Turkish, Tagalog. So these are the languages we're working with to be the source of words in this language. So what we're going to talk about today, I didn't reorder my tabs because I didn't have time between last time and this time to do so, but we are going to talk about sound, what sound system might work best for this language, and we're going to talk about phonotactics, and we're going to talk about the phonemic inventory, consonants and vowels. We may get into stress, tone, and pitch today too, but we'll have to see about that. And the reason I wanted to start with phonotactics and not actually what sounds my language will have, the reason I wanted to start with that is because I want to know how many sounds I need as per some of the grammar decisions I made earlier on. And I also want to know, so that's like the first priority with phonotactics. And the second thing I want to know, the sort of second priority when making these decisions, is what do the phonotactics of my source languages look like? And how will that inform my decisions so that I can sort of preserve the form as much as is realistic and possible in my language of the source word. So I need to look at what my source languages allow. So let's head over to phonotactics. So we can ignore these here. When I'm talking about phonotactics, I'm thinking, how am I going to break up my sounds into chunks and have them be pronounced? So I'm going to start with talking about syllables, and we can talk about morai too. But actually, I should talk about morai, but I'm going to start with talking about syllables. and I didn't actually have time to like prepare a little presentation on this, so this is just kind of off the cuff right now. I'm just going to explain one way that we can think about syllables that might help this conlang. So you have a syllable. It consists of two halves, we could say, of the onset and the rhyme. And the onset's just made up of the onset. This is any consonant that may exist at the beginning of a syllable. Not all syllables begin with a consonant, so I'm putting it in parentheses. But it depends on the language, right? Some languages will require a consonant at the beginning. And then the rhyme is the rest of the syllable. And the rhyme is made up of the nucleus and the coda. Put onset in parentheses because there's not always an onset. And then the coda, there's not always a coda either. The nucleus is made up of what is called a syllabic consonant, or vowel. A syllabic sound, it needs to be either a syllabic consonant or a vowel, which tend to be syllabic. Non-syllabic vowels end up being semivowels. So the nucleus is usually a vowel or a syllabic. There we go. Let's try to remember the command for that. A syllabic consonant. That little line beneath the C indicates that this consonant is acting as the nucleus of the syllable. So you could have a consonant in some languages that functions as the nucleus. And then a coda is any consonant you might have at the end of the syllable. Now, a nucleus can be made up of multiple vowels, potentially, or vowels of varying length. And then the coda can be made up of multiple consonants, depending. It could have more. Depending on the language, they might allow many consonants at the end. English allows a lot of really thick coda consonant clusters in our words, especially when we pluralize things in it. So we add an S to an already pretty thick string of consonants. We end up with some really big clusters. And onsets can also be complex. We could also have multiple consonants in an onset, potentially. Oh, I need another parenthesis there. There we go. So, this is sort of the possibilities in one sort of model of the syllable. Not the only one we have to use, but this is kind of the simplest one that we can think about. So, if I'm going to have clusters in this language, I prefer to have clusters that are varying in sonority. And when I say that, what I mean is they're not exactly of the same level on the sonority hierarchy. I'm not going to talk a ton about the sonority hierarchy right now, but basically, if we have a stop consonant like a P or K, typically, it really depends on the language, though. Sometimes I'm very okay with it. I might want to be okay with it in this language just because of the source languages I have, but a consonant like pa, maybe between vowels or something like that. So like akpo or something. These have the same, K and P have the same sonority. They're both stop consonants, voiceless stops even. Akpo, 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 akpo. Whereas a cluster like, let's say I have M or L, these are sonorants. They have more sonority. They're a nasal and a liquid, respectively. So if I had like a KL, those have different sonority. I could say like aklo. And I just find the sound of this kind of cluster more aesthetically pleasing than this kind of cluster. There's no problem with this kind of cluster though, and it can sound nice as well. It's just my own like taste, I might say, for clusters. We could go like anko, anko. Did a velar nasal there, so that's really, or right phonetically, it would be like this. Anko, anko. Like a different sonority, and it sounds nice compared to like apko, apko, apko. Yeah, it's just an aesthetic thing that I tend to prefer. And if I'm gonna have complex onsets, which I'm not sure about, I'm probably gonna need them in this language, but I definitely like them to be decreasing in sonority. So a stop, a plosive, plus some kind of liquid, L or R, or maybe a glide like y or w. I tend to be more keen on these. There are some increasing sonority ones that I'm okay with too, like nasal plus plosive. Those are fine too at the beginning of words, especially if they're voiceless plosives. I really like the sound of those as well. But we need to look at what our source languages give us. Now, what I have here are some words in some of my source languages, only 3 of the 5. And what they are words with some interesting clusters. So this Greek one, if I were to write it out in romanization, it looked like this. That little squiggle over the eta is a pitch contour marker in classical Greek, but in Koine Greek it was just stress. There wasn't really much of a distinction as far as we could tell. At that point, the pitch accent was giving way to a stress accent. So this is gdema, gdema. So it has this KT cluster, same sonority, and it's really interesting, probably difficult for English speakers. Cluster gda, gdema, gdema. And then we have this word in Sanskrit. This is, I forget how to do this. There we go. Dex kshat fetra. There we go, yeah. Kshetra. Yeah, kshetra. And this means kingdom. This means possession, like a possession someone might have is gdema. This means like a kingdom. And they're actually related to each other. They come from a similar root. And you can see they have a different cluster, but they go back to a similar root. And the root is actually a TK in Proto-Indo-European, and it goes through metathesis. It switches the order because I guess speakers of both languages found k to be hard to pronounce, but kta easier. And then kta in Sanskrit becomes ksha. And this one is hik. Well, okay, phonemically, it's hik. He. I'm trying to make sure I'm reading this correctly. I always mix up my sin and my shin in Hebrew. It's shin, yeah. I also just want to make sure I'm getting this vowel right as well. I know the second one is long and stressed. Let's see here. I just wanted to make sure that that was correct. Yeah. Hikish. Hik. Hik. Hish. Now the thing is, phonemically, this is a K and a pharyngeal fricative cluster. Ka. And a lot of speakers nowadays, when they pronounce this word, actually do that. They just have the K here. But technically, it should be the allophone of K. It's still part of the same phoneme. It's still considered the same sound, but in Hebrew, there are situations where K will sound more like a Ch sound. It's like this. And this cluster is rather difficult even for some native speakers to pronounce. Really interesting cluster. So yeah, but it comes from this cluster in older Hebrew. It's just Hebrew has a system where the stops P, T, K, and B, D, G become fricatives. F, I think it is like a true F. F, th, ch, v, the, r. In sort of historical pronunciation. In modern Hebrew, not all of these variations still exist, I think. In modern Hebrew, this is T again. This is still V, but this is D, and this is, I think this is G. I don't know. This might be different in different dialects of Hebrew, but sort of the modern standard Hebrew that I see a lot of the time, T is T, and D is D. They don't do the interdental fricatives anymore. But this might be still in place in some Hebrew dialects. It's definitely in place in the Hebrew time period that I'm probably going to be taking from. The Hebrew reading pronunciation that I'm going to be taking. But this is a potentially difficult cluster, and I would need to find a way to represent that cluster somehow in my language. Same with these. If I were to borrow one of these words from Greek or from Sanskrit, I'd want a way to represent this KT or K retroflex S cluster. So I could allow both of these clusters. That's the wrong one. There we go. I'll try to put it into IPA there. So I would need to figure that out if I'm going to just allow these clusters. Now, this is Greek, Sanskrit, and Hebrew. Yeah, there are plenty of other sort of clusters like this that could be potentially difficult, like pta. We know there's some English words with psa that come from Greek that we just don't even bother with the p, like in psychology. That's from psyche, in Greek. We just don't bother with the p in English. We kind of acclimated it to our sound system, and so I'm going to have to acclimate the words that I get from these languages to my sound system. And so how much will things need to change to fit my system? Because this cluster actually bears some load. There's a word tema, which means something different in Greek, that I might want as well. So I would want to differentiate tema from just tema if I get rid of the T, or if I get rid of the K. So that's these languages. Greek and Sanskrit, they have plenty of these kinds of clusters in the middle of words and the beginning of the words. What we don't see a ton of in Greek and Sanskrit are complex codas. They have some restrictions, both of them, on what kinds of consonants can come at the end. Usually Greek will only allow you one consonant at the end. There are some exceptions, but by and large, most words will just end with one consonant if they end with a consonant. Sanskrit can end with multiple, but if it ends up with multiple, there are a bunch of different rules about what they could be. They're usually not more complex than just a nasal and a consonant, a plosive consonant like a stop, like an NT or a velar nasal and a K. And there's even some restrictions on what types of the columns that we had in the Sanskrit phonology, what types can come at the end. and what voicings they could have. There are some situations where if you have like maybe a D in your root somewhere, it actually becomes T at the end of a word if it's ending your word. So that's something to think about as well. Sanskrit has some limitations on what kinds of consonants could come at the end, but it does have some complex final clusters. Now with Hebrew has the templatic morphology, so it has the triconsonantal roots. This one, the roots here are K, this pharyngeal fricative, and then the sh sound here. And they're coming in this form because this is sort of an aspect, I think. It's one of the ways to conjugate the verb. And so this root will show in a lot of different shapes. Like here we see it in a cluster, but you could have another form where it's just like K. Oh, there's some lag going on, sorry. K, maybe another vowel, and the ha, and then sha. Coming in different places. You have it, theory with this root, you could have like this kind of situation going on as well. So things can come in a lot of different shapes. So for Hebrew's sake, I would probably want to be permissive, very permissive, especially middle of the word, medial clusters, like this, because there will be situations in Hebrew where pretty much any two consonants, depending on what your root is, could come together in the middle of the word. So that is another consideration, is that Hebrew, if I want to preserve as much as I can from it, I'm going to need to be pretty permissive of what kind of consonants can come in the middle of a word. Now with Turkish, I didn't put any examples of Turkish words here, but Turkish words, for the most part, follow like C, V, C, and maybe another C. Although there are limitations on what these two C's can be, especially at the ends of words. But across syllable boundaries, there's a lot of permission. If you end a syllable and then you start a new syllable, there's not a lot of restrictions on what the second consonant can be. So you can end up with some interesting clusters in Turkish. What Turkish does not have a lot of, in native words especially, are initial clusters. There are some loans with clusters at the very beginning of words, but they're very rare and they're loans. So Turkish does not really do that. There are also some restrictions on what sounds can come where, like certain consonants can't come at the beginning of words. With some exceptions, all final plosives, B, D, G, etc., are devoiced to PTK. I think Z to S too. I think. I would need to check that. No, that's not true. Z can be Z at the end of the words. I think it's just the plosives. There's like a few words where these are contrasted at the ends of words, but typically they just become voiceless. Kind of like Sanskrit, a little bit in that way. With Tagalog, I had some trouble finding sources for Tagalog phonotactics, but a friend helped me out and sent me some resources to read, and I did, which was cool. So thank you if you're watching the stream. You know who you are. And with Tagalog, the kinds of clusters you might end up with at the beginning of words. So words pretty much all begin with a consonant, which basically means all syllables begin with a consonant. The consonant could be a glottal stop, in which case it's not written in Tagalog. But if you see a word that starts with a vowel and there's no consonant ending word before it, then you're going to have a glottal stop there. If it starts with a vowel in the spelling like ah or something, there's actually a glottal stop there. It's just not written. And the glottal stop is phonemic in Tagalog, so it is there. it has to be there. So we can say that all syllables begin with a consonant. There are a few words that have clusters. If we ignore loans, these clusters are usually a plosive plus a glide, like ya or wa. And there's some variation in some words between it being a cluster of a glide and then a vowel, and then that glide ya, wa, if you have like a consonant. But with those, some words, they'll still be spelled like this, except with a y instead of a j. They'll still be spelled like this, but they will be for sure clusters. So that's one thing to think about. If the clusters are pretty limited when it comes to native words, there can be long or short vowels. It seems to be very conditioned by the stress and the openness of the syllable. They didn't come up as phonemes on the phoneme charts that I was able to find, but reading more, it does seem like there might be some situations where they are contrastive, the long and short vowels. So that might change my vowel inventory information that we're going to look at in a little bit. So, and then all final syllables in a word end with a consonant. If it doesn't end with a consonant in the spelling, it's going to either have a glottal stop or an H, depending on what situation you're in. And I'm still learning this. I'm still trying to figure this out. It's new to me. Tagalog is very new to me. So this is still something I'm learning about. You won't really have clusters in native words at the ends of syllables. You might have a glide, like a ya or a wa. These are usually present in loans as well. I wasn't able to find any like native Tagalog words of like Austronesian origin that have that cluster, but they might exist. So across syllable boundaries, usually the consonants that you're seeing, if you have like this kind of situation, the consonants that are touching in the middle here, they could be a lot of different things. There are a lot of possibilities here, kind of like with Turkish. So you may also want to be permissive there. So I think with the source languages that I have, at least within the middle of words, and possibly at the beginning of words, despite Turkish not really having initial clusters, Turkish doesn't really have initial clusters that aren't loans, and when Tagalog does, so Greek has lots of CC, Sanskrit has lots of CC. Can't think of CC happening much at all in Hebrew, but it's possible. Mostly I see C in Hebrew words, and then the clustering tends to happen in the middle. And then with Turkish, you're usually C, and with Tagalog, you're usually C, or C with a glide. I'm going to spell the one that I picked, yeah and more. So, even though these tend to be a little bit restricted in what shows up, Greek and Sanskrit are really permissive. So I should probably be permissive, but still, they'd still be rare. Stuff like this would still be rare, but it would be allowed if I allow these kinds of clusters at the beginning of syllables. I could just have it be any two, because in Greek and Sanskrit it could often be any two, as long as they're pronounceable together. Sanskrit has some rules about how things will change when they come into contact. We're not going to go over all those together right now. In terms of vowels, Greek has long and short vowels, and it has some diphthongs. We looked at what those could be. Koine Greek doesn't have a lot of diphthongs. It usually just has like ew and ow, which might have not even been both vowels anymore, depending on what Koine dialect I take from. Sanskrit also has long and short vowels, and it has those diphthongs, but the diphthongs seem to be long and short versions of each other. So that's going on there. Turkish does not have phonemic vowel length, so just vowels. Oh wait, no, this isn't Turkish. Turkish is here. Hebrew is here. This is just the unofficial order I'm going in. Greek, Sanskrit, Hebrew, Turkish, and Tagalog. Okay. Yeah, Hebrew can have long vowels. Now, the reading of Hebrew that I'm taking from contrasts quality rather than quantity in most positions. There is still phonemic length, even with the 7 quality interpretation of Hebrew reading, but it's not, in that reading, it's not written, it's not sort of preserved in writing, and I probably wouldn't be preserving it in my loans. I thought about it a lot. We're going to look at what Hebrew I'm probably taking from. Probably today we'll look at it. And then Turkish, no vowel length. Tagalog, I'm still learning about the vowel length here. Yeah, no. I'm struggling to put the half length here. It's just a dot, but we'll say I'm still learning about the length. It seems to be conditioned a bit by the environment, though, so it might not be phonemic outside of a few circumstances. And then in terms of coded consonants, Greek can have some coded clusters, but at the ends of words, almost like say like end of word, usually just has 1. Sanskrit has a 1 or one of increasing sonority. So I'm just going to say C and then higher sonority C, or lower sonority, I mean. Not increasing sonority, decreasing sonority. So I could just do down, actually, that's clear. Hebrew can have some clusters. I'm trying to think of word final clusters in Hebrew. Yeah, they usually decrease in sonority. And when they can't, from like the period of like Proto-Hebrew to Classical Hebrew, there was sort of epenthesis of consonants or of vowels when you had like a cluster with similar sonority at the end of a word. So it usually also decreases in sonority when you have a word final cluster. Or you could just have 1 consonant, or you could have none. Of course, I could put these in parentheses, but I'm just kind of trying to put the maximum that's required, or that's allowed, I guess. All these can have coda. I was gonna have codas, and these tend to have codas. Okay. End of word. Turkish, again, tends to not have lots of clusters at the end of words. It has some limits on what they could be. I guess that these could all be CC plus asterisk, but I think they also tend to go down in sonority. Yeah, it's usually a liquid in Turkish, a liquid, and then either a voiceless fricative or a voiceless plosive. So it goes down in sonority as well. A liquid or a glide at the end, or a nasal. And then Tagalog usually doesn't have clusters at the ends of words, but if they do, they also go down in sonority. Okay, so if I allow final consonant clusters, I don't want to just be as permissive with final clusters as I am. I don't have to be as permissive as I am in the beginnings of words, as I will probably need to be for Greek and Sanskrit's sake. I'm just going to write these 2 consonants of decreasing sonority. Okay. Alright, so where does that leave us? Let's see. my computer is being strange right now. Just taking care of that off. Oh no. Sorry, that's so loud. Alright. Turn down my volume a bit. Okay, so where does that leave us? That leaves us with probably needing to allow most consonants as onsets at the beginning of words, at least. Word immediately, it'll just be any cluster of vowels, and I'll need to figure out what vowels I'm going to allow, and then a consonant. Now, one thing I didn't really talk about much is this consonant could also be a glide, like a y or a w in a lot of these languages. It doesn't happen as much in Greek and in Sanskrit because they have diphthongs that are taken up by that. So it's like, instead of long vowel, they have like vowel, vowel. Now, the Koine Greek that I'm taking from doesn't really have that except for aw and u, like I said. Sanskrit has those two. Hebrew will sometimes have the coda be, you know, a y or a w. Doesn't really have phonemic diphthongs that I can remember. Turkish, I'm not, that knowledge escapes me right now. I can't remember if they're phonemic diphthongs. I want to say probably not, but I could be completely wrong with that. And then we have Tagalog, which doesn't have phonemic diphthongs to my knowledge as well. I could, again, be completely wrong with that. But we'll see what phonology we might end up with. So I'm going to quickly glance at the different phoneme inventories that the languages that I'm taking from have one more time and talk a little bit about them. We talked about them yesterday, but I just want to mention. So this is Koine Greek, and I think I might be landing on treating these as the aspirate ones. I may change that, but for what I was doing today, I considered them to be the aspirates, the p, t, k, and not the fricative f, th, ch. For purposes of comparing them with the other sound systems, I did that. I might decide to go with a dialect that was aspirating them instead. And I also didn't consider this to be a phoneme Koine. Just from my experience with Koine, it tends not to be read out when you're reading Koine Greek. It might have still been occurring in some dialects, but some of them were clearly losing it at that point in Greek history. Here's the Sanskrit again. And I did confirm this is indeed just an allophone here. It's not a phoneme. It's just what happens to N when it comes into like this N, this alveolar N, when it comes into contact with one of these consonants. It just becomes this, and so it'll be spelled differently to kind of match the fact that it's next to these, but it won't distinguish. You won't ever see like one of these nya by itself, contrasting with a word that's just na. But these are all phonemic. There are words that just distinguish each other based on them. And then we have, let's see here. Come on. Hebrew, which we didn't have a slide for last time. So, the reading I went with, at first I was going to go with Tiberian Hebrew, which is the Hebrew reading tradition that goes with the scribes who wrote the Masoretic text, which is a 7-vowel quality system. There's still a bit of debate about the contrastive vowel length here, whether these, or most of these, could have long and short versions of each other, which would distinguish words. I think most scholars are leaning yes, but some are leaning no. But for the purposes of what I'm doing here with this language, to make things easier to load in, I think what I'm leaning towards is the reading that sort of between Tiberian Hebrew and the Palestinian reading of Hebrew text, which there's some variants of Palestinian Hebrew with sort of degrees of how similar it is to the Tiberian reading, and I chose like one that's pretty similar to the Tiberian reading. But that gives me more of this neat system to learn from. And what I also like about it is that it has this neat system of the reduced vowels. I'm not going to talk about these at length today. When we get into some Hebrew loans, I might talk more about them. But different readings of Hebrew distinguish different numbers of reduced vowels. In I think in some Palestinian readings, there's just this one reduced vowel, and these are not contrasted. But it depends. Alright, and then we have Turkish here. Oh yeah, I did want to point out there are these emphatic consonants that don't exist in any of my other inventories. There's also the uvular ga here. And then these are not uvular, I just put them in the same column. They're the pharyngeal ha. I do struggle to pronounce this on command in isolation. And then ah. But these emphatic consonants are pharyngealized, tha and sa. Arabic has more emphatics that I had when I was thinking about doing Arabic. But I'm just going with Hebrew instead. And then we have Turkish here, and we looked at this last time. Something unique it has that none of the others do is this velar approximant, which does actually vary in pronunciation depending on what vowels come around it, but it's it's written with this G with a little brev over it. And I'll talk more about it when we actually start loaning words from Turkish. And it has this vowel harmony system with neat 8 vowels. Then we have Tagalog, and I'm still very new to Tagalog. But we have these 5 vowels here. Now, what I did is I started by making a heat map of the consonants and vowels that exist in my 5 source languages. And what I did was I have this sort of scale of like this sort of greenish, like blue-greenish color here to this sort of reddish color here for how many of my source languages on a scale of 1 to 5. If it's only in one language, it's this color. If it's in 2 of the languages, it's this color, etc. until we get to these red ones, which are in all 5. Just to see what the overlap in the phonologies are. And what you can see is the ones that occur in all 5 are some pretty common sounds. Mana, pata, ga, badaga, sa, la. And then the 3 most common vowels, I, U, A. And if I wanted to have my conlang be made up only of sounds that exist in all 5 languages, that would actually probably be my inventory of consonants, which is very small. It's not a lot of consonants and not a lot of vowels to work with. It's doable. There are languages with less, so it's not impossible. But minimalism is not my goal here. It's expressly a goal that my language is not minimalistic, in fact. So I am not going to go with just the 5. And the other thing I wanted to account for is that between the different languages, there are sounds which are only exist in one language, but they're never contrasted with a different sound that only exists in one language that is similar in sort of articulation. So what I did is I took my heat map and I grouped it into sounds that are distinguished between each other within a language versus not across languages. And then sort of recalculated the frequency. And let me explain what I did here. I'm going to put these away for now. I sort of recalculated the sort of numbering based on these groupings. So, for example, here we had the V and the labiodental la in Sanskrit. So V only existed really in Turkish, and la really only existed in Sanskrit. And wa existed in, I think it was 2 of them. It had to have been 2. It was 2 of the other languages. Hebrew and Tagalog didn't exist in Greek. So, but none of those languages contrasted between them. So, Turkish, for example, had V, but it didn't have wa or wa. Sanskrit had va, but it didn't have the or wa. And Tagalog and Hebrew had wa, but they didn't contrast with these 2. So we can kind of call them the same sound or type of sound, like a wa or the sound. That then we could say 4 of the 5 languages have a sound like that isn't contrasted with each other, but you don't have to differentiate them because none of the source languages do. Same with these R sounds. So we had like a tap, a trill, and a retroflex tap in Sanskrit. And this one only occurred in Sanskrit. This one occurred in 2 of the languages, and this occurred in 1 of the languages, I believe. Let's just check the phono heat map. Oh yeah, no, 2 of the languages, 2 of the languages, and 1 of the language. But if you combine them all because none of them contrast between each other phonemically in any of the languages, we just call them all one sort of rhotic sound, and all 5 languages have one. So it goes to 5 now, all of a sudden, from where it was before it was not showing up. Same with this H, some kind of H-like sound. Sanskrit has a ha that's different from the voiced ha, but it's actually, this H in Sanskrit is actually an allophone of either S or R at the end of a word. It's not a phoneme, it's sort of an allophone in Pasa. So if I'm going to loan the word, I probably want to loan the phoneme rather than the allophone anyway. So all 5 languages have some kind of H-like sound. Another thing is, if we looked back at the phoneme for the palatoalveolar and the alveolopalatals, these occurred in 2 languages, and these just occurred, and these all just occurred in 1. But these aren't contrasting with each other. They are different sounds, and some languages might contrast them, but none of the languages that I'm taking from contrast these with each other. So I just grouped them as sort of palatalized affricates here. And then that brought actually the number up to, I believe it was 3. 3 of the 5 have it. And yeah, so that's sort of the method with my grouping here. And same with the vowels here. These are not contrasted in any of the languages that exist. But they exist in a lot of languages that I have, if you group them together like this. One thing, however, that I did want to check is whether any of the languages contrasted the height of these. I know that the long ones are contrasted in height in Greek. Let's see, yeah. The height of the long ones are contrasted in Greek. But E doesn't contrast with an E. And the height of O is not contrasted. It's not contrasted in Sanskrit either. So I actually was thinking about the height is contrasted in Hebrew. That's the thing. That's the reason I didn't merge those. We go back to phono here. Let's see. yeah. I want to think about this. These two are contrasted in Hebrew. I think there are some readings of Palestinian Hebrew where this vowel is read as O, and there are others where it's read as A. I think Samaritan also reads it as A, Samaritan Hebrew. So I could potentially just go with a reading that merges these, because then I end up with this sound here. I'm going to reflect on that some more, because that'll kind of change what the readout here is. So this does give me more consonants to work with if I'm just, again, going by consonants and vowels. I keep saying consonants. Phonemes, consonants and vowels that I could work with. It gives me more. If I still wanted to stick to just sounds that exist in the majority of my languages. And what I did was I kind of made two little mini systems, like hypothetical systems potentially, that are what consonants and vowels I would have if I went with different, if I had like a different cutoff of number here. Well, whoops. I just want to look at one at a time right now. Okay, so this is the inventory I might end up with if I were to say the sound needs to exist in 3 or more of my languages in order for me to have it in this language. If it exists in 60% of my source languages, then it's going to be a phoneme in my language. So what that gives me is, so it's just these 3 and up. So here's what that gives me. So that gives me, I didn't do a little sort of squiggle between these two possibilities, but it could be either of these. Yeah, so what that gives me is mana patachaka badajaga sashaha za va orwa la ya. And I didn't decide on a rhotic. I just wrote the letter R. It could be one of, I could choose one articulation that I like. And then with vowels, it gives me this 7 vowel system, like the one that exists in Hebrew. The Hebrew that I'm taking from. It's basically what the Hebrew system is. It's I just have that vowel system. And this could work pretty well. I speak some languages with 7 vowel systems, so that's fine. In terms of being able to pronounce it. There are some issues with taking from the system, though, that I do want to talk about if I were to go with it. I then did a more like sort of conservative one where it needs to be in 4 of the 5. So it's not just, it needs to be in all 5, it needs to be in 4 of the 5 for me to have it in the language as a phoneme. And this is that system. Now, let's look at this. We have mana pataka badaga sashaha avoa la ya ra, and then we have these 4 vowels I, U, E, A. And I actually have to say I really like this 4 vowel system. I've never done a 4 vowel system like this before. I've looked at languages with this 4 vowel system. I really like it, actually, a lot. But it does also present some issues as well if I were to go with it. Now, I think the thing I was considering with O, because if we look again at my vowel inventories, this vowel inventory here in Greek, this vowel inventory in Sanskrit, this one in Hebrew, and then Turkish, and then Tagalog. All of them have present some variant of like these 5 vowels: I, E, A, O, U. I, E, A, O, U. Now, if we went with the 3+, we'd end up with the open and closed mid distinction, e, a, o, o. That would be distinguished. But all of them have some sort of flavor of this. Not like, for example, in Turkish, they're formatted differently because of the way that their system works in Turkish. However, they all exist as sounds that are distinguished. All 5 languages do. So reading it out like this is a bit deceptive, because what I'm forced to do, because some languages do contrast these heights phonemically, is it makes it seem like fewer of them actually have 5 vowels, because some of them contrast the qualities. And so that's why when I'm looking at 4+, it's only giving me these 4 because of the contrast between o and o, and the contrast between a and e. Still more of these have e if you count these different variants of them, but all of them have some kind of O sound. All languages have some kind of O sound that is distinct. So I think a fair system would include an O and an O. And I could go O or O. The only reason I have this one is because this is the one that comes up more. But if I don't contrast them, then I could just have it be either, whichever A I want it to be. It could be E or E. The thing is, a couple of my languages do contrast it, so it would be a merger. Yeah, but I think for ease of typing, I'm just going to call them N-O. So 5 vowel system. If I were to go with this one, I still should have it with 4 languages. There should still be some kind of 5 vowel system. It's just the quality of these be different depending on the different language that exists. That I'm pulling from. So, pros and cons of these 2 systems. What this system has that this does not, basically, the primary difference is that it has Z as a phoneme, and it has these palato-alveolar, palatal affricates, ch, j. And these exist, as we can see, in 3 of my source languages. They exist in Sanskrit, they exist in Turkish, and they exist in Tagalog. They're not phonemic in Hebrew, and they don't exist in Greek. So if I had these, they'd only be showing up in those 3 sources, which is often enough to warrant them existing. Now the downside of not having them, if I were to say goodbye to these and go with this system, which I do have to say I do kind of like this sort of dorsal column, where the dorsal fricative is actually sh, and then, even though it's technically coronal, because it has a palatal quality, and I could have it just be alveolo-palatal. I like this column. It's sort of aesthetically pleasing to me to see this here. What would I do with these sounds that exist in 3 of my languages when I loan? So let's say I have a Sanskrit word that starts with a cha, which is spelled with C in Sanskrit. I'm trying to think of a word. Cha. Like the word cha is a word and. Cha. Now, how do I loan that? How do I loan that into my language if I don't have that sound? Does it just become sha? Because that could contrast with a word sha, right? These would be mergers. Now I could just, again, then go choose a language that's not Sanskrit, so I don't have this merger here necessarily. Now what Tagalog does in its orthography, when it has a ch sound, Ch shows up as this in loans, and some speakers actually pronounce it as this affricate sa instead of ch. But in native words, it's usually spelled ty, cha. Now this contrasts with this ty cluster, yeah. Which is spelled like this. So I can't really get around having it, or I can't really get around this. If I wanted to say, oh, this could be tia, like a cluster, and this could be sha, you know, tia. So cha becomes tia. Maybe I have it allophonically pronounced as cha, but it's not distinguished as phonemes. But then if I have a Tagalog word that starts with like tia, what do? This would be phonemically tia, phonetically cha. That's not the most elegant solution, in my opinion, to do. So I need to think about this. I think as much as I like this system, I really like this system, I feel like to preserve meaning in a lot of my languages, I need these consonants, even if they show up in 3 out of 5. So 2 of my languages will not be contributing words with these sounds. They don't have to be super common anyway. I'm fine with that. So that's fine. It's fine. That's fine, yeah. Yes. Now, as much as I like the 7 vowel system and I'm used to it, I don't think I want to distinguish these many vowels in my language phonemically. I'm okay with flattening it to a 5 vowel system. So I think what I might do to compromise between these two things, have between 4 and 5, is to have this vowel system with this consonant system. I also, how do I feel about Z? I like the consonant Z a lot. It comes up plenty in Turkish, it comes up plenty in Greek. I do like turning my intervocalic S's into Z's, but I'm fine just not doing that in this language. I like Z. Let's keep Z. Why not? Yeah, Z is our friend. Let's close this. And we got a consonant inventory to work with. I think for now I'm going to spell it V. This one. But it could be pronounced W. It's kind of what Latin and Old Norse and a bunch of other languages do. I'll use V for W. So I can do that for now. And I guess, otherwise I'll keep it IPA for now. So, now if this is my consonant inventory, I'm going to put some other restrictions, like these can't come in initial clusters. Like you don't have like chta or jda. I don't think any of the languages cause that to happen. So these will sort of not come up in initial clusters. They might come up in medial clusters. So you might end up with like a chka or something in the middle of a word, and that could probably be fine. One thing I do kind of want to avoid, I know it comes up in Tagalog, sometimes we have like a G and then a K, or a K and a G, is I don't love how that sounds, to have like a ba, or a ba, or da, or a da. And the place where these clusters would occur, if I do have consonant final roots, this is part of why I said I wanted vowel final roots for verbs. If I have consonant final roots, then when I do my noun classes, and those begin with consonants, I don't want to choose a consonant that could be the same as one of these consonants, but with the opposite voicing. So like, if I have a root that ends with T and D is one of the consonants I'm using for my vowel classes, I would just want it, I wouldn't want like a da or something like that. It's pronounceable for me, but I would prefer to not have that come up too often, especially if it's going to be in a productive ending. Oh, one thing I didn't look at is gemination. Ancient Greek has gemination. Sanskrit, I think, has gemination. Hebrew definitely has gemination. Turkish has word medial gemination sometimes, syllable boundaries. Tagalog, I think I read something about gemination somewhere, but I can't remember what it said, actually. So, this is going to be a question mark for me for now. Whoops. Okay. Let's take a look here. So, I want to think about gemination, because what I could do in those circumstances where, say, like a T comes up against a D, like let's say I have a root like lat, and then an ending like this de, or something like that. Lat de. I could have a rule where I have assimilatory gemination. So either it becomes latte with double T, or lade. I can decide which one wins in this kind of situation. Lade. So like the root ending will change a bit, actually. And this could cause some mergers. Like this could lead to like what happens if it's lad de that comes together. So lad de and lad de would be the same. They would merge in that instance. I could be fine with that. But I do want to try to avoid it, at least if I can. And of course, I could also just make sure none of my endings have the kind of consonant that would create an issue. So if I stick with maybe like liquids and semivowels, that could maybe help with that. So let's say it's like a consonant that ends with like a D. If the next consonant is L, dla, that's fine. I'm fine with that kind of cluster. Some speakers aren't, but I'm fine with that. Or dia, or kia. Chia might be hard because it's already palatal. So chia, it'd be difficult. I could also have a parenthesis. I could say in these instances where it's a weird cluster, I could add a vowel in. Another place where it might be weird is certain liquids with certain other liquids, and certain nasals with certain other nasals, or liquids and nasals. So the word ends with M, or no, it's fine with M. If I have a word that ends with N, and the suffix starts with L, nla, I don't have a problem pronouncing nla. If it's like denla, or the reverse, delna, denma, demna, no problems distinguishing those. I could do gemination, but that would cause some mergers. I could also just be fine with that. LR together can be tricky for me sometimes, like rla, and ral, lra, elra, erla. That's fine. I kind of like the sound of it anyway. Yeah, so if I keep things to sort of these sonorant sounds, ma, na, la, wa, ya, etc., with my sort of noun class endings, then I should be fine with consonant final roots. But I did say I was leaning towards vowel final roots anyway. I would need a way to get those vowels there, because roots for verbs in a lot of my source languages are going to end in consonants, not in vowels. Yeah, pretty much all of them, when I think about it. I think there are some in Turkish, maybe in Tagalog, but Sanskrit and Greek, other than some derivational endings where they do end with vowels, Sanskrit and Greek have mostly consonant final verb roots. So you might need to choose a form of the verb that ends with a vowel, if that's what I want to. If I want vowel final roots. Or I could just ensure that it's fine without adding anything. Alright. So if this is my inventory, I want to now look at what happens with my languages if I'm going to loan from them. Maybe I won't start with Greek, though. I'm going to start with Sanskrit, because Sanskrit, I think, has the most phonemes of all of the ones that I've looked at. Okay, so I'm going to add columns this way. Oh, not rows, columns. I think I'm going to do columns, because I still want to see as much of it as I can. I need to highlight them by column then, don't I? Okay. I want to drag my phono here with me. So I was going to copy them onto here, but that might get kind of complicated. So, if this is my consonant inventory, actually I probably do need to paste that anyway, just so I have it as reference. Okay. Some issues that arise. I guess what I have to do is kind of group what becomes what in this language. So, I am not, it appears, if I go with this system, it appears that I'm not contrasting aspiration. Now, this aspiration does not bear a lot of load, because these are not as common. But these have a load. I was actually looking at, between last time and this time, practicing making the distinction. I still struggle with it. But I think it is learnable. I think I can definitely do it if I need to. But no other language of my source languages makes this distinction. I know the Greek voiceless aspirates correspond to these, but they sound like these. So, if I were to keep them, it would be kind of weird to loan them differently from each other. I could, but I kind of don't want to. So, what I'd probably have to do is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to group them in boxes of what's going to be the same in my my system. So these would all be B. I think all of these would be D. I'm grouping the alveolar and the retroflex together because the retroflex ones historically mostly come from the alveolars with something triggering them to be retroflex. some surrounding consonant or vowel. So that's why I'm grouping them that way. So this would be mana. Yeah. That's not even a phoneme. This would also be N, actually. I should have just merged these all together. Say no, and then say yes. Alright, there we go. These would all be N. From what I could see, there aren't a ton of words distinguished between this and this. This usually shows up before a velar. There are some situations where it does contrast, but they're not very frequent. These would be my cha and my ja. I'm going to still keep merging the alveolar with the retroflex here. Now these will be separate because there are going to be different phonemes here. Often this is what conditions the retroflex. And then this is its own. This isn't really a phoneme either. It's going to go with whatever it comes from. This is its own phoneme. Whoops. No, I did not mean to merge those cells, sorry. I'm just trying to group them. Okay. And then same deal here. My computer is having a rough time right now. Okay. Now with these consonants here, so that's the consonants. So we have ma, na, ba, da, cha, ka, ba, da, ja, ga, sa, sha, va, la, ra, ya, ha. So I think this language is not contributing is Z. Z is going to come from other languages in terms of the consonants. Now vowels, this gets tricky. So these I'm just not contrasting the length anymore. And these are diphthongs, but I could just consider these O, I guess. Long and short, because they are long and short of each other. It's just the and or already long. And yes. Oh, what I didn't talk about is this one. This is a nasal vowel. But it's actually, it comes about when you have a final, like a word final nasal. So I could just keep the M or the N that causes this tap. So I'm just going to leave that for now. There's my 5-vowel system. Now these, I have both these sounds. And what I could just do is have these be li. When they're loaned in, they could just be li. Li and ri. However I do that. That is fine. Alright, Hebrew. Oh yeah, I wanted to look at Sanskrit first because of all the aspirates that it has, because now I then want to look at Greek and how that's going to work. So I think I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, which is instead of having these, I'm just going to box them in. So these are pretty clear. What am I going to do with the aspirates? I'm just going to say no, because they do distinguish between plenty of words. just like B versus B in Sanskrit does. But I guess I'm going to have to be alright with that. I'll just have to avoid those by pulling from a different language. So yeah, these are going to be P. It's interesting because there could be cognates where a word is a B from a Sanskrit root because it's aspirated B in Sanskrit, but it's a P in Greek because it comes from an aspirated P in Greek, which are cognate. That's interesting. That's kind of cool. Etymologically, that's pretty cool. These are just themselves. And these are all themselves too. These don't change either. So there's plenty of sounds that this language is not contributed. The ch, the j, the sh, and the v are not coming from this language. Okay, and then vowels, kind of same deal as we saw with. Hello, there we go. With Sanskrit, the length is merging. Oh wait, yeah, no, the length is merging. Why am I putting a separation? I'm okay. Now here, the length and the height is merging. And Greek is just going to have to be okay with that. Now the interesting thing is, this sound here in Koine Greek merges in modern Greek with this sound. So these all scooch up, and then this scooches up too to fill its spot. So you end up with and then of course the length merges in modern Greek too. So you just have E, U, E, O in modern Greek. Anyway, but these will become modern Greek E. And this becomes modern Greek A. Alright, and then these merge. And then these merge. That's nice. Okay. I guess I didn't need this. I'm able to remember this, I guess, now that I have it in my head. Alright, and that's Greek. Are we good with Greek? Yeah, that's Greek. Greek is accounted for. Okay. Some thick vowel mergers. Okay, let's go on to Hebrew. Okay. What are we going to do with some of these sounds in Hebrew? Okay. Oof. Okay, this gets tricky. Some sounds I don't know how to account for in Hebrew. So these reduced ones, I think these will all just be ah. I think I'm fine with that. And I'll just figure out the stress somehow. And then we'll have a height merger for the mid vowels. Alright. We'll deal with that somehow. Now, what am I going to do about the emphatic consonants? What am I going to do about the emphatic consonants? Alright, let's start with what I know. I know that these are going to be merged. Or not merged, sorry. These are going to be themselves. And these are going to be themselves. And these will be themselves. W becomes modern Hebrew V anyway, a lot of the time, so it being V or W is fine. And then these can be themselves. I do with these? And the emphatics. The emphatics, the uvular, and the pharyngeals. Now the uvular one I could probably just merge with K. This happens for some speakers of Hebrew anyway. Nowadays. No, we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this. Okay. The glottal stop, like in Tagalog, is phonemic in Hebrew. So what do I do about that? My phonotactics, well, I'll just have to account for that. I'll just end up with some, where a word begins with a glottal stop, it'll just begin with a vowel, I suppose. That could happen. Or I could have it be allophonic at the beginning. I could just allow myself to put a glottal stop there, but it doesn't have to be. Inside of words, though, this could get tricky. I might actually need a glottal stop, even though it doesn't exist in a ton of my languages. I might need a glottal stop. It exists in 2 of my languages. 2 of 5. This isn't a lot, but yeah, 2 out of 5 of my languages have a glottal stop. I might still want it. I'll have it just sort of float about for now. I'm going to say it's not a phoneme right now, but it might become a phoneme. I might decide it needs to be a phoneme at some point, even though it's not in a bunch of them. Because I am, while I was looking at what exists in most of them, I am also going to have to reconcile these. Now, the pharyngealized consonants here. Now I think this sound merges with the glottal stop in some forms of Hebrew. Even though it's very different, they merge in modern Hebrew, in some forms of modern Hebrew. I think this merges with the allophone of K, which becomes phonemic in modern Hebrew, I think. The ch, and that merges with that. I can't do that. So what I'm going to do, something very unorthodox, and merge these. It's going to be very strange because there are a lot of minimal pairs between these two. But they're going to have to be fine. Don't know what I'm going to do with you. I might do some kind of vowel hiatus for this voiced pharyngeal. That's going to have to float about, as will the glottal stop. So, yeah, you're going to go in there. You'll be yourself, I guess. And I guess we're just going to have to deal with merging the pharyngealized ones. Now, I think some forms of modern Hebrew have these merge anyway. I think, well, I know that this pharyngealized S becomes an affricate S in modern Hebrew. So I could actually have this sa become ch, my ch phoneme. That seems strange though, but it does become sa in modern Hebrew. So Tagalog spells ch with sa sometimes, and sort of has variation between them. Maybe that's what I do. Maybe this becomes ch. That's strange, but I think I'm going to do it. It's an interesting sound change. It's just taking the next step of sa, taking it to ch. Alright. And then sa is sa. Alright. That's Hebrew. This is still floating question mark, and this is still floating question mark. This is more of a question mark, I think, than this is. All right, Turkish time. Actually, it's not Turkish time. It's break time. We have about 50 minutes left in the stream, but I'm going to take a break for just a few minutes. So I will be right back. So we're going to say 10:15 a.m. PST is when I will be back. All right. Thank you. I will be right back. Alright, I have returned. Thank you for waiting. So, where were we? So we were looking at how the phonologies of my different languages would be sort of adapted into my phonology. If this system here is indeed my phonology here, or my phonological inventory. So let's look at Turkish. Turkish is probably one of the most straightforward ones that we have here. We've got, well, when it comes to vowels, it's not as straightforward, but when it comes to consonants, it's pretty straightforward. So we've got, these are themselves. These are also themselves. That's pretty nice. These are also themselves. That's pretty nice. These can be themselves. These can be themselves. These can be themselves. And these can be themselves. Or this can be itself, I guess. So the two sort of little issues that we have with Turkish consonants for my consonant inventory is the business with F and the business with the velar approximant here. So okay, I'm considering something. Apologize for my silence. I'm trying to figure out what I can do with the F. I can't think of a good place to put it. Merging it with V does not seem like a good idea to me, because V is also doubly, and that just will sound very odd for a word like with F to then become W. It happens. But it feels odd to do. So I could do something historical with this. I do have a little bit better of an idea of what to do with this one. So historically, this consonant comes from an intervocalic G, and so it only occurs after vowels. So I could just group this with G, because it comes from G between vowels. Now G can come between vowels in modern Turkish now, but historically that's where this comes from. What it does is so it can be pronounced as itself as a sort of velar approximant, but some people translate it as transcribe it as a velar fricative instead. But in any case, it becomes y after front vowels, between front vowels and a consonant a lot of the time. But often it just lengthens the preceding vowel. It makes the preceding vowel longer. And since I'm not contrasting vowel length, I could just not even represent it. It could just disappear. Or I could have it with G. Actually, I do have an idea. Because what I'm realizing is, even though not all of the languages have phonemic vowel length, a lot of them have vowel length in some capacity in the phonology, even if they're not phonemically contrastive. And I'm wondering if maybe I want to have vowel length still, in some way, and then use vowel length to sort of preserve this boy here. And I'm thinking I might do something with H. So this is a question mark here, or not a question mark, but this is kind of hanging, kind of like the glottal stop is, as something to consider. Now F, I need a place to put F. Is there room for F in my phonology? Only exists in one language, one of my languages. Now I could. Well, in some dialects of Koine Greek, as I was saying, these consonants, or these diphthongs, were actually becoming these. So, and in modern Greek, they're pronounced like this. So, that could be another source for F. That could put it up to 2, if Greek is giving F. I could also reconsider what Greek I'm taking from. Take it from one where they've become fricatives, and then I could have F, I could have theta. Theta could just, I don't know what would happen to theta, where that would go, where th would go, and where ch would go, I guess it would be H. If I do that, if I don't merge these, but instead have these be fricatives, this could be my source for H in Greek. Yeah, this could H if I be a lot more like modern Greek a little bit. And then the problem then is just, what do I do with theta? But this would bring me up to, this would still only bring me up to 2 languages with F. Hebrew. Hebrew. Phonemically, there's pataka, badaga, but these are called bagad givhat letters because they can become fricatives. Like I was saying earlier, these become fa, tha, cha, va, tha, ra. Va, tha, ra. And I don't want to have to preserve it all the time. I don't want to have another source for V when this is already giving me a source for V, and another source for H when this is already giving me H. But I could preserve what modern Hebrew doesn't preserve and have a th come from T and a f come from F, which modern Hebrew does preserve the F there. F has become contrastive, I believe. So that could be another source for F if I wanted another F. Yeah, I could end up with F. That still doesn't give me enough to warrant having a th, even if I keep the allophone of T that comes from th. What do I do with theta? If I do indeed have theta here, there isn't a place for it in my phonology. I don't want it to become S. I guess I could just make like Latin with its Greek borrowings and keep it T. That's an option. Yeah, I could just do that. I could just keep it T. Yeah, I suppose that works. Yeah, that works. Okay. That's still only 2 languages, but I think having F be rare is fine. F can be rare. So that does give me 2 languages with F, I guess. Which on my phono I'm going to also represent here. Now I could have a bigger phonology. I've been going with like sort of ones that show up in the majority, 3 or more. But I could go with 2 or more. I could have a much bigger phonology if I wanted. I could... Oh, if I change that, this also puts these back down to 1. Then I really won't have aspirated anything for sure, because Greek would no longer be contrasting aspiration. And I need like that there, which I then just merge with H, I suppose. Or I can merge it here, like Hebrew does. And in that sense, that's 2 there. What might that look like? Let's think about that. It'll be like ma, na, na. Yeah, and then pa, da, cha. I'm just gonna spell it with C for now. Ka. And we've got ba, da, ja. Spell it with J. Ga. Actually, yeah, I'll spell these out. We've got fa, sa, sha, ha, ha. I don't like contrasting these 2 with each other. I just aesthetically do not like doing that. Plenty of languages do it, but I don't want to. Personally, we've got V, L, J. We'd have something that represents these 2. Actually, we'd have some kind of like a or something. Let's write with this. Maybe some people who transcribe Turkish put that instead. And that would be something to do with this consonant in Hebrew. And then we have R. Okay. That's not much bigger than my existing one. Oh, Z. Forgot about old Z. Good old Z. Oh, I just need one. No. No, stop. Okay. You're really lagging today. Really, really lagging. A lot. Yes, okay. So, you know, I don't hate this phonology. The only thing, my only criticism is this. Yeah, I'm fine with this. My only criticism is this scenario here. This ha versus ha. But I would want these to be distinct for the sake of Hebrew, for the sake of Greek, and for the sake of the idea that was growing in my mind with the. I have an idea of what I want to do with that. You know, I might. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do something kind of strange. And I'll explain what this is about later. But I'm inspired, in part, by Turkish's lengthening of vowels. I'm also inspired by another thing that I'll explain in a bit. I don't know if we're even going to get to it today, but I have a nefarious plan with this. Yes. Okay. So we'll come back to that. But I like this as my consonant inventory a lot. It makes things neater for the sake of Turkish, and makes things a bit neater for Greek as well. I don't have to feel conflicted also about the whole aspirated thing, because now it's just Sanskrit that has the aspirate problem and not Greek. Because I'm effing this, and I'm cheening this. Okay, the aspirated K. I'm just needing to say goodbye to theta a bit. I love the sound. I love the interdental fricative. Love me a good interdental fricative. I might decide I like it just for the aesthetic anyway. Eventually down the line, I might just add it in as a rare phoneme. It's my language. I can do what I want, of course. But, yeah. One other thing I'm realizing is there is no source for F in Sanskrit. And there's no source for Ch in Sanskrit. I could copy what I've done in Greek and have these be the fricatives, like I did with Greek. Just apply the Greek sound change in Sanskrit. I don't. I could do that. It would be interesting. I don't think I like it. The words will be way. I feel like even though there's a merger that it creates, if I merge these, they're still more recognizable than if I completely changed what sound they were. And had like a word that starts with pa or a word with ka become fa or ha. It would just sound too non-Sanskrit. So yeah, I'm just not going to do that. Just be at peace with that. Alright, Turkish. So that's Turkish, so that gives me an F to work with, an F. And this gets to exist as well. In a sneaky way. Now the vowels. The vowels is where things get complicated with Turkish. So I have 5 vowels. I, E, A, O, U. So it's these sounds that in Turkish use a special character that I'm not sure what to do with because the vowel harmony. Oh, the vowel harmony. So, there's height harmony, there's backness harmony, there's roundedness harmony. I can't actually think of a place where height harmony exists in Turkish. I need to review that for sure, but as far as I know, there's only back and roundness harmony that can exist in Turkish morphology. Like you won't have like E versus A as alternates of the same morpheme, I don't think. But I do see lots of A versus A, versus O. I see all of these being possible because it's just the phoneme is it's a high vowel plus this thing. I think, for example, for the genitive case, I think it's just high vowel that agrees in backness and roundness plus N. So height harmony is definitely, or not height harmony, backness and roundness harmony is definitely a thing. So, how am I going to group these? I guess I can make like what modern Greek does to you and just unrounded the harmony. Yeah, I guess I could just get rid of the roundedness harmony in all, but A or U. That just, A and O, that just feels wrong to me. That feels so... I'm having like a visceral reaction to this. I'm really not liking doing this. I don't know why. It makes sense for my language, but I'm not liking it. Greek has a sound change merger that does that, so does Old English, even though that's not one of my languages anymore. It just feels viscerally wrong to do this. I just feel like I've just violated the Turkish phonology right now. The Turkish vowel inventory has been decimated. Gosh, that is so... Oof. Well, I'm not going to have vowel harmony in my language. They're just going to be frozen in whatever form they're in, and that's how I take it. So, I'm so sorry, Turkish. You're a beautiful language, but you're going to need to undergo this merger in loans into this language. I'm so sorry. I feel so awful doing this. I also have this kind of visceral reaction to the aspirates here. But I feel like I'm not doing as much violence to it as I am to the vowel system here. Because it's still, like, at least neat. Here it's like any sort of harmonious contrast that once existed no longer exists in Turkish. Okay. Goodbye, Turkish. I'm so sorry. Alright, Tagalog now. So, here's the Tagalog inventory. So, the vowels can just be themselves. Yay! Okay. Alright, vowels can be themselves. Yay. Okay. Consonants. Now, if I'm going with this larger inventory, I can actually keep na. Oh, I'm going to go back to Sanskrit and write that as well. Sanskrit nga is back. It's returned. We missed you. Okay. Yay. Okay. If I'm going with that larger inventory here with the nga as a phoneme, Tagalog has plenty of it. I think it warrants existing. It's in 2 languages, but we're going to be a little bit more permissive. So, yeah. Now, all of these can be themselves. We've got that floating glottal stop thing going on again. All of these could be themselves. No source for F in this language. Now, F does exist in some varieties of Tagalog, mostly in loans, but it gets pronounced, I think it's P, in a lot of varieties when they are loaned in. So, at least in native words, I don't think there's F. If that's wrong, feel free to correct me and I'll fix this. But yeah, for the most part, the consonants can be themselves. It's just the glottal stop that I'll need to think about with my phonotactics a bit. I'll think about that more deeply between now and next time. Okay, so that's how it shakes out with my... Wow, this is so pretty. Tagalog can just be itself with the exception of the glottal stop. Whoops. Okay, that was weird. Okay, Tagalog can be itself. Beautiful. Turkish can mostly be itself, except for the poor vowels. Greek can mostly be itself except for its vowels, which are also kind of in a state of disarray. But that's our phonology. So yeah, I'm going to put these back to 1 since I'm going with the Greek that has fricatives now. Yeah, okay. So I'm going with consonants that exist in 2 or more of my languages, and vowels that exist in 4 or more. Because if I keep the vowels as they were, gosh, and I make this special thing with O, because the way that this reads out the vowels is kind of strange. I will explain my idea with this soon. I'm not ready to explain it yet. I want to look at how things are going to shake out first. Let's go over to my agenda real quick and update it, because we've gotten through a bit. So we got through review. We've gone through the phonotactics. We've gone through consonants. And we've gone through vowels. Stress, tone, pitch. Do I want to talk about that today? I don't know if I'm ready to talk about that today. Yeah, I'm not ready to talk about that today. I'm going to move that down. What I do want to see, though, is with my inventory, how certain things might come out. And give an example of what the process for this might look like. So, I want to try to see if I can coin a word in this conlang. Because now that I have a phonology, I'm not completely 100% on my phonotactics. I think I need to test it out to see how my phonotactics are going to come out. So, I need to see some things. I'm trying to think of a word I might want. sorry, I'm thinking of what word I want. To try to coin to begin with. At least root to coin to begin with. Trying to think of something basic that isn't going to be like sort of weird or controversial for my sort of goals. Something that like makes sense to have in this language. So let me think. Alright. I'm not sure where to put this. I guess I'll put it on phono for now. Yeah, I don't have a good place for this. Maybe phonotactics would be a good place to put it. I'm not sure. Yeah, let's try out a word. So, let's say the word is water. And it's the root. So in Greek, the word for water is, well, we're going to ignore H because the breathing thing we're going to get rid of. It's okay. So that's water in Greek. So I'll have to think about what that becomes in my language with the sounds. So we have U, we have D, we have O, does not distinguish length, and then we have R. So that doesn't change very much from Greek to my conlang's phonology, at least. For water in Sanskrit, we have ap. And if I'm going with this sort of permissive, like I can end with at least one consonant, it could be whatever, that would just be ap as well. Ap. Ap. Not ap. I was aspirating that, but it's not aspirated. So, yeah, that's kind of a short word, honestly. But that's okay. It's allowed. There are some other words for water that aren't as short. Jala means water in Sanskrit. Jala. And so that's also an option. Jalam. Jalam. I'm going to put both there, up and jalam. So this is like up. And I think in Sanskrit, in the vocative, it ends up losing the M there. It's a neuter A stem. So the M is not actually part of the root. It's just, it's not part of the stem. It's just an ending. So we could just not have it there. Any kind of inflectional endings, I kind of just want to not include for my roots, because these are just going to be roots that I then add things to. Oh, actually, speaking of which, I might want to consider the Greek again, because the Greek has some different stems. If we go with koine, idor, if we go with koine, there's some different roots there. As you decline it, it ends up with a root that looks like this in classical Greek. But there's also sort of like the form that it takes when you put it into compounds is usually this. And this is where we get the root, like hydro in English, is this one. But it still has the R. I think the R, the O and the R are important. I could go udor, udro, depending on what sort of shape I like. Yeah. So we have options there. I feel like there's another Sanskrit word for water, but two is good to look at for now. All right, and then we get into Hebrew, and in Hebrew, the word for water is I'm trying to see if I remember it. The word for water is I think it's dual or plural. It's mayim. Mayim. Whoops. Mayim. There we go. Which in my language is just going to be oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with the stress here. And the Sanskrit stress doesn't even get preserved past the classical period, I think, in the way that it was in Vedic Sanskrit, so I'm not going to put the stress together. I'm not ready to talk about stress, because all these languages have very particular different things going on with stress that I'm not ready to talk about. This will just be my... now, the thing is, the root here is my, it's along my, and when it's in a construct state, it is, the word just becomes, the word becomes may, before, like, the waters of something. Sometimes it's actually reduplicated. It's got like may. It does come up, I think, sometimes too. So that's a bit tricky. The im here is plural, the plural ending, because in Hebrew this noun is a pluralitatum. It's always plural. Now, it's fine to loan it like that, I think. Although typically, you know, if I have a noun with im in Hebrew that's plural, I would want to not have it because it's an inflectional ending. But in Hebrew, it's always plural. Just water is an always plural thing. And my language has default collective, so that's kind of elegant and nice that it's like that, in my opinion. But I like it. I like it. I could decide if I want the im, even though im is inflectional, just for this particular word because it's always plural. I could have like always plurals keep their im ending as an exception or something. I like the sound of mayim. I also like my. All right, Turkish. The Turkish word for water is su, and that does not need to change at all to come into my language. I'm trying to think of other words in Turkish for water. But I think it's just so, like, just plain water. If I don't want to go into like other forms of water, like rain or the ocean or something, then I'm just gonna have to stick with su, I think. Very short word. And that's fine because it's a common word. Water is important. And in Tagalog, the word for water, I think, is tubig. I'm gonna check. Actually, I'll look it up. Tubig. Okay, yeah, that's too big. Too big, and the stress is on the too big. Yeah, too big. And apparently, I just found out it is from a compound of that which stands in the mouth. In classical Tagalog, and with a D, tubig. If there are enough sources on classical Tagalog, that would actually be a really cool source. Because I'm taking from like old languages. Ottoman Turkish would also be an option if I wanted to like go for older sources, but I don't know if I'd have enough to use. Okay. Now this wouldn't change, because I have all these phonemes, and I don't have any restrictions on it. If I wanted to put the kind of restrictions that exist in, say, Sanskrit or another language, I might, like Turkish, I might need it to devoice, tupik. But these are not, this is not going to be at the end of a word, because this is going to be a root to which I add, other stuff. So, I could choose from amongst these roots to get a root for water. Actually, there is something I want to check. Okay, yeah, no, oh, yeah, up is just up, yeah. I'm trying to see if it shows up in, like what forms it shows up in, because it looks like in classical Sanskrit, up only exists in plural, and in plural it's long. In Vedic Sanskrit it shows up in singular in some cases, but it looks like it's always plural in classical Sanskrit, which would be appa. And this H here comes from an earlier S, the plural in Proto-Indo-Iranian is S here, appas. Now I'd lose the length, of course, but I could say if I wanted to do that. And it is, I'm trying to see what declension is. It looks like it's just a consonant stem from Proto-Indo-European, which does not help me with the whole vowel question. So that's fine. I'm like, I could swear there's another word for water that is actually related to the Greek one. I'm like, I know this exists. I know it exists. I've seen it. I've worked with it. Yeah, there is. It is, udan. Apparently it always also means wave. And this would be udan. In my language, udan. Udur, udan. Yeah. So these are some options for a root for water, if I were to do this. So this is the source, and then this is sort of my phonemic inventoryization of what these would be. If I were Loshban, I'd do some math to figure out what sounds occur in what percentage of these, how often, and make a hybrid form. If I go with udan here, that gives me 4 out of 5 of them that have a U somewhere in it. Ooh. if I'm just trying to like do this mentally. And two of them have a D. If I go with classical Tagalog, this one has a D too. But you know, it's very disjointed. I'm not going to actually do that method. I was just kind of playing around there. The reason these are similar, the udan and udor, is because they come from the same root, because they are Indo-European. So I feel like it's kind of not fair to do that. I'm just going to kind of maybe disqualify this one as its source, just because, or disqualify Greek, because I like how udan sounds better than udor. Udan, udor, for water. It's also related to the word water. If you're wondering, it sounds kind of similar to water. It's related to water. It's the same root as water in English. Jala, ap. Ap doesn't feel very watery to me. Appa, maybe appa. Mai feels very water to me. Su feels watery. The thing is, su is really short. Su is very short. Too big. Now, water, the noun, would be in the matter category. So I would want my matter class ending to be something that fits with whatever this ends up being, and I would want this to fit with the class ending. It probably should go the other way, because the class ending needs to fit with every root, potentially. Matter. So there's going to be a matter suffix on whichever one of these I choose. And the issue I'm having with su is that if I put a matter suffix, let's say my matter suffix is like la or something, then that kind of makes it so it's awkward if I also then have a root that's sula. Because when a root shows up by itself, that's going to be like the imperfective of the verb, I think, is what I was saying. Right? That could be the case, and I don't want to cut off that possibility. So I kind of don't want su. I think just in terms of how short it is, the fact that it's just a C plus V, I don't think I want it. Yeah, I don't think I want su. My, I like my. The problem is if, let's say, my ending is ya or something, then it's my ya, and we have like a double ya. I could be fine with that, my ya. I can do that. That's not a problem. Up, ya, apla, apra, apma, apna. That's all fine. Jalaya, jalara, jala. Yeah, I like up and I like jala. I also liked udan. Udanna, udanma, udanla, udanya. Udor, udorla, udorma, udorna, udor, udoria, udroma, udrona, udrola, udrora. Udrora, udorora, udorra, udorla. Too big, yeah, too big la, too big. Too big, yeah, too big ra, too big ma, too big na, too big, too big, too big, too big. for water. Let me think. Jal is the word for water in a lot of the Indic languages that are spoken now. There's also one that's pani, I think. I've seen pani before for water. But I know in Hindi it's jal. I'm trying to figure out if I can remember where jalam comes from, like what root. I can't find the origin of jalam. It doesn't matter. I was just interested to see if it would like give me some help, push me in a direction. I think I do want to go with jala. As weird as it might sound, for water. I don't know, but I don't know. I think it sounds weird. It doesn't sound weird. I like it, jala. I might go back on that though. I kind of like up too, just because even though it is one syllable, it's a syllable ends with a consonant. That is kind of a downside, but I'm fine with any of the clusters that could come up with it. They could result. I think I kind of want to see more words, like different words, and how they show up in my language before I decide, actually, whether or not I want consonant final roots or vowel final roots. I know I said I would prefer vowel final roots for the sake of my system, but I think I might go back on that depending on, now that I have my source languages, I think I want to hold off on that. Okay, so that's where we're going to end. We're 10 minutes over. We'll stop there, and next time, then what we're going to do is, we did phonotactics 1. I think phonotactics 2 is figuring out, doing more sort of like loaning in of potential words, and we're going to do more loaning in of potential words and see what the phonotactics ends up looking like as a result of loans. So I'm going to just loan in a bunch of words, or like show what a bunch of words would look like loaned in from from all of the source languages, and we'll look and see what patterns we notice with the phonotactics and see if that fits what we need based on our needs in terms of like what coded consonants we need and things like that. We should be good with coded consonants given my inventory now. we have enough for like the different case endings that we potentially would have. But in terms of the root shape, I guess it's root shape too, is what we're doing, phonotactics and root shape. So yeah, where we landed was on these consonants, which I will explain H next time. I'll explain that. H and this one. I'll explain that next time. And the vowels. These vowels, these 5 vowels. So that's the tentative system. I also want to come up with a way of like how I'm going to Romanize these, because I don't think I'm going to want to keep using IPA the whole time that I do this. So I'll decide on a way I want to Romanize it between now and next time as well. So next time it will be normal Thursday time, 5 to 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Conlang with me, and the next Saturday session will probably be, it might be at this time again, it might be at a different time, we shall see. But thank you everyone who was able to show up for this stream live, and thank you to anyone who's watching this in the future. I will put this up on YouTube as soon as possible. I hope you have a great rest of your whatever time it is. Thank you, and goodbye.